I read the Atlanta Journal and Constitution's comments about me speaking tonight. One jumped out at me and it broke my heart. It says, I don't listen to rap and I'll no longer be listening to Bernie Sanders. And I just want to say that whoever wrote that, before I was a rapper, I was a son of Atlanta. Before I ever wrote one rhyming word on paper, before that, I was a black man in America. And before I ever learned how to dance a jig, I gave a damn about American politics. I gave a damn about the people of America, and I took to the streets and I advocated.
There it is. Before I even sung or danced a jig, I was an activist. He said he gives a damn about the black community in America at large. So I'm just kind of miffed. And I don't understand why anybody will write an op-ed attacking this man who is an activist in his own right, standing up strong for the people, not only the people of the great state of Georgia, but black people all over this country and all people. So, he's a freedom fighter. He is a 21st century freedom fighter. He comes from a strong tradition in the ATL, his grandparents, and being able to he was fortified at the feet of some of the greatest civil rights activists of the 20th century. He was forged there in that way, in the ATL, and his life's journey thus far is an indication of what he cares about. He is a husband, he is a father, he is a brother, he is a son, and he brings all that he is to every single thing that he does. So why, oh why, I say, would he be attacked in an op-ed that linked him to the foolishness and mayhem of Kanye in his misdeeds at this time? So here's the headline. This rapper is more politically dangerous than Kanye West. Killer Mike cozied up with Georgia Governor Brian Kemp and Senate candidate Herschel Walker, allowing legitimacy to their campaigns with the black community. Doc, jump in here.
So first of all, Killer Mike's a friend of mine. He's a good brother, a decent individual. Let's be clear about what they're trying to do. They're trying to say that in order for black people to be black people, they must think all alike. They must be monolithic. The reality is Killer Mike is complex. He's a nuanced individual, intentionally so, by design, not by happenstance. So let's look at some of the statements he's been criticized for making. He said that Kemp, who is the current governor of Georgia, Stacey Abrams' opponent, he says, listen, the guy has run an effective campaign. He has. That doesn't create legitimacy. The campaign is already legitimate. He's the governor. Killer Mike's comments cannot create legitimacy for the campaign. Has Kemp reached out to some segments of the African American community? Of course he has, okay? All politicians do it typically on some level. These things are just truths that he decided to put out. That doesn't negate the fact that policy on top of policy, Killer Mike has always advocated for the values of progressive policies up and down the equator here. So you can't bring this element up as if it somehow creates a summary against our brother without explaining the context connected to his own statement. So I hate when I see people do this to individuals who obviously are advocates. And I understood his point when he said it hurt him to see some of those comments, because when groups or individuals that you love and you advocate for, communities that you support, when they have a misunderstanding about you, that hits in a different way. So I absolutely get what he's saying there. But this is a way to limit what he can say. Sometimes he has said things that I have disagreed with. He's been on my radio show multiple times. Killer Mike and I, we have had discussions where him and I did not see eye to eye on something, but guess what? That's my brother. And not only is that my brother, that's my brother in value. Him and I still believe alike more so than we do not.
I agree with that, Doc. And you know what? There's a saying that if two people always agree, one is not needed.
Come on.
This makes no sense, and it was reckless of this writer. It was cruel of this writer to conflate, to put Ye and Killer Mike after what Ye, White Lives Matter shirt, handing it out on Skid Row. I mean, this really is the height of recklessness. And you know what, Doc? In 2018, Michael Render supported Stacey Abrams. I talked to him about supporting her, and he did just that. And you know what else he did? He helped to get Senator Bernard Sanders to endorse her. He was the first.
Yep.
He was the first major national figure to endorse her candidacy in 2018. You know who helped to make that happen? Michael Render helped to make that happen. And so the way that they're trying to slay him right now makes no sense. I want folks to take a look at this.
I know I'm preaching to the choir tonight. I know there are not a lot of voices of dissension out there. I know I'm preaching to the choir, but I'm here to tell you, stay encouraged, stay invigorated, stay bold, stay confronting bull at every turn. Make sure that wherever you go, you take the name, the ideas, the philosophy, and the ideology of Bernie Sanders there, and you make sure when you leave, they are on fire because they have felt the burn.
Come on now, make sure they are on fire because they have felt the burn. Doc, in that video, he's encouraging people who are standing up for what is just right and good, basically telling them, do not get weary in well-doing, and also saying to them, don't accept the BS. Don't just accept anything that people try to hand you. Stay fervent in this fight.
Yeah, and it's necessary because obviously there are opportunities to become distracted. The reality is this: we don't really vote for people. We think we do. Their names are on the ballot, but we're actually voting for policies that they represent. So while people may get affixed to a personality, so to speak, the reality is you're voting and supporting policies that could impact communities you love dearly in a very negative or positive way. And when you summarize the life and the lifestyle of Killer Mike, you clearly see that he is not anti-black, that he is not some type of surrogate of Kanye West. It's not even close. Killer Mike's not a sellout. He doesn't do things with the motivation of money or sensationalism. The brother is a thoughtful man. And if you disagree with Killer Mike, that's fine. That's all right. That's all right. Many people disagree with me too. That's part of the process. But that is still our brother in this journey to make this country a better place. He's coming from an authentic place. Even in disagreement, he's coming from an authentic place.
That's right, Doc. And we're gonna show a video of Killer Mike. Really, he was a guest on the Bill Maher show, and he makes it clear where he stands on police brutality. Take a listen.
I think that in terms of being punitive, I've often heard politicians talk about coming down on crime. Police officers that are guilty of these crimes should serve no less than life in jail in terms of murdering someone. Police officers that do this should have their pensions cut off and paid to the families of those murdered, and the taxpayers don't need to keep paying these suits off. And last but not least, we need to make police officer training longer than 6 to 8 months. It needs to be like a junior college, at least a couple years, and you need to either be reflective of or come from the communities you're policing.
So not only is he talking about the situation, and we know that Ahmaud Arbery was murdered, was gunned down, he's also laying out what the expectation should be within law enforcement itself. Doc, he never runs from the fight. So while we got Yee denying the fact that Officer Derek Chauvin killed George Floyd, this man is flat out, he just denied this. You have a leader like Killer Mike laying it down about the consequences that police officers, anybody in law enforcement should face if they break the law, and then going a step further to give advice about the type of training they should have in service to their community.
I concur. And one thing about Killer Mike, and I follow him for many years, he always offers a remedy. He will point out the problem. We've had forums, we've done panels. He's been on my show many times. He will articulate the problem, but he will also point out the remedy. And he will be very thoughtful about what that remedy or what those remedies should be. Typically, you don't find a lot of that in the community that he is expressed from. because many times we are really fixated on the problem. We got a lot of them, and we have to bring them to the forefront so that others can see, here's what we're dealing with. But he does that, and he always provides a base of solutions that can be applied. I remember when he was on Maher's show, and it's so interesting, that was a few years ago. When he did Bill Maher's show a few years ago, we now have this conversation about police reform in Atlanta. Literally last year, those policies that he talked about on that program started to be implemented at Atlanta City Hall because of deaths and egregious behavior of APD officers in Georgia. So back then, it was prophetic in some regards, but now it's being implemented today, some of those remedies he talked about on the show.
Absolutely, and speaking of City Hall, when there was recent unrest over the shootings, Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms reached out to none other than Michael Render, AKA Killer Mike, because he has the street credibility, the knowledge and the wisdom to bring about a certain type of calm, and he exudes a certain type of authority. Watch this.
So I'm duty bound to be here to simply say that it is your duty not to burn your own house down for anger with an enemy. It is your duty to fortify your own house so that you may be a house of refuge in times of organization. And now is the time to plot, plan, strategize, organize, and mobilize.
There it is. I mean, he just laid that down. So on the right side of him, Doc, that's former Mayor Keisha Bottoms. And on the other side, a leader within the police department. This man was called upon, and usually when he is called, he answers the call. The bottom line is that Michael Render, AKA Killer Mike, for me, is the personification of so many other greats that have come before him who utilized their cachet for a greater good at a risk to themselves. I mean, Doc, Michael and Shay, they own businesses in the ATL, in and around the ATL. They employ numbers of folks in the ATL. So this man is a businessman. He is an entertainer. He is an activist, a father, a brother. He is all of those things. And he uses his cachet in a way that he doesn't have to. It reminds me similarly of what the great Muhammad Ali did. He's not beholden to any party. Yeah. He is a free thinking black man in America who understands that on issue by issue. I mean, sometimes you got to work with Satan himself or herself if it's an issue that is going to help your community or help the downtrodden in this world. Doc?
I remember when he did that press conference, I also remember what was happening that night. There was protest, there was some violence. It was both happening. And Killer Mike, as well as T.I. T.I. was there at that press conference too. The reason why we only really see the Killer Mike segment is because he was the most powerful orator and the most effective leader to calm down the streets of Atlanta that night, because it was about to get serious in Atlanta. And so he was called upon, even though I have seen my brother put his foot up the asses of every single one of those politicians and that police chief.
Come on.
When it came down to it, he was the person they said, give the microphone to.
That's it, Doc, because he is, as he stated in that first clip we shared, an activist first. Before he started singing and dancing, he was standing up for the people because that is how he was fortified. Killer Mike, we want you to know, brother, keep doing what you're doing. Don't let anybody turn you around.
Amen.